Welcome to the Deal by Me podcast, where we invite guests to share their stories. Hello, I am Dr. James W. Smith, your host. So when you listen to any of the Deal by Me podcasts, please consider supporting us with a donation or a monthly contribution as low as $3. If you're viewing or listening to this podcast on YouTube, please subscribe. To all supporters, we say thank you. Be sure to check out my inspiring, encouraging, and transformative books available on Amazon. I'm also available for speaking engagements, so feel free to contact me by way of Facebook, LinkedIn, or my website, www.dealbymepodcast.com. I have with me Luke Mickelson, who grew up a hardworking farm kid in the small town of Kimberly, Idaho, where community, character, and service was simply a way of life. An avid athlete and lifelong competitor, he poured his energy into youth programs, coaching, and mentoring, developing both a passion for people and a natural talent for leadership. I am excited to have uh, my friend Luke come and share with us today. And so, Luke, would you be so kind to tell listeners a little bit about yourself and where you are located?
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Dr. Smith. Yeah, I'm a farm kid from Idaho. That's where I live. I actually still live close to the same little town that I started my charity in, 14 years ago. And so, yeah, that's where I work out of home, obviously, as you can see. And as the founder of Sleep and Emily Peace, I spent a lot of time doing speaking engagements, PR work, and raise awareness, and also working with national donors for our charity. And so that's pretty much sums me up with what I'm doing right now.
Okay, all right. Luke, it's good to have you. I was impressed with your profile and to what you do, and working with nonprofits, and yeah, seemingly very interested in young adults. So let me ask you uh, this: you talk about how you how your life has always been defined by community, character, and hard work.
Yeah.
Um, Talk a little bit about that because listeners like to know what is your background and how did you get to where you are now?
Yeah. It's a great question. Thanks for asking because, being from a small town, and there's a lot of people that are from small towns. My town growing up was 4,000 people. And I tell everybody, listen, when you live in a small town, there's great things about it and there's not so great things about it. And unfortunately, they're the same thing, which is everybody knows you and you know everybody else. And looking back, that it may have not been that great back then when everybody knows all your secrets. But as you get older, you're able to look back and appreciate, I grew up in that community, right? A desire to support and be a part of a community. Number one, you kind of had to because you were,
Hmm.
it was a small tight knit group. But I really appreciated that, and I didn't know I was building such a love for community. I thought everybody just, when someone was pulled off the side of the road, you stopped and you
Hmm.
saw what needed to help, and you just knew everybody, which was looking back now is an amazing thing to have. I grew up in a single parent home. My mom raised us five kids, and that's where I think I got a lot of my community support. I remember when my parents split up. I walked out to the mailbox one day, and this was just before Christmas to grab the mail. Well, in the mailbox was an envelope that had $1,500 of cash in it, right? And that was the support from our community that wanted to help the Mickelsons out,
Mm.
And I remember, Dr. Smith, you look back at those times, and I remember thinking at the time, anyways, I thought, what, someone could, so they did, and so when I can, I will, and that's just kind of the mentality I had, And that came from having such a tight knit community, and I always kind of carried that on in life. I'm one of these guys. Being a farm kid from Idaho, I love outdoors. I love hunting. I love fishing. I love doing watching college football. I love to do all this, but I didn't like to do it alone, right? I always liked
Hmm.
someone around. I just felt better when I was with my friends or family or even complete strangers. Being a fisherman, I used to post on Facebook all the time, "Hey, I'm going to go catch some sturgeon. Does anybody want to go?" I mean, it didn't matter, and I had complete strangers show up, and we had the best time. I just love that. And if it isn't a shock to everybody, I kind of went into outside sales. It kind of made sense to me. I enjoyed quote quote knocking doors and meeting people and that was just home for me. It just felt comfortable,
Mm.
So and I attribute that all to my upbringing in a small town.
Okay. I love that. That's really interesting. I grew up in a very small rural community myself, so I have a good feel for what you're saying.
Mhm.
Well, I always give the saying that when you enter the community that I live in, when you enter it, you're leaving it. So you know how how small that was.
Yeah.
But something else I saw that was of interest to me, and that was you stated that in 2012,
Mm,
you took a simple act of kindness and turned it into Sleep in Heavenly Peace, one
mm,
of the fastest growing nonprofits in the world. So my
mm.
question to you is, how do you scale a nonprofit nationwide? How you get that to get as to the point where you have it?
It's a great question. I'll tell you, this doesn't happen overnight.
Hmm.
You know, we started in my garage building beds for kids because I found a need and saw a need and wanted to solve it, and that turned into more building beds and more kids. And then I realized, oh my gosh, child bedlessness, although not a real word, is actually a
Hmm.
real problem. I mean, it's
Hmm.
everywhere, and we know now child bedlessness represents greater than 3% of the total population of any given town on average. So, if you're in a town of 100,000 people, there's 3,000 kids that don't have beds. And the other problem was is no one was doing anything about it. I didn't know when I wanted to be a charity a couple years after I started this family Christmas project. I went to the internet to find another charity that was doing what I was doing. I found one in the whole country, one in North Carolina. That was it.
Hmm.
And so I realized that not only is the need huge, that there's not a lot of support, especially in the nonprofit sector. And so, we started a nonprofit. Well, I also knew, Dr. Smith, that there were a million people out there, especially my little community, that they wanted to give back. They just didn't know how, and I
Hmm.
think everybody's searching for ways that they can contribute to their own society, contribute to their own community and their friends and certainly their family. And so, when I started inviting people to come help build beds with me, I noticed they all loved it. They loved it just as much as I did, and they
Hmm.
loved the hard work because I found out that, and this is the key, is the volunteer experience with Sleep in Heavenly Peace is just as important as the kids that we serve. Because we want, I mean, obviously, this is how we complete our mission is providing a good experience for our volunteers. And so and they get be able to have a great experience, have those fulfilling feelings that we all want to get when we go and serve, right? And when
Hmm.
you do that, that inspires people. It lights a fire of passion in them that they want to now continue doing what you're doing. And when you have a mission like we do, where it's kind of a niche, no one's doing it, and it's
Hmm.
providing a service for kids. I
Hmm.
mean, it's not a hard sell, brother.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
so when you present the opportunity, because I knew, especially when we started realizing that this is a problem everywhere and it's
Hmm.
huge. I knew some farm kid from Idaho is not going to be the one that solves it in, Miami,
Right.
Florida. I needed to provide a platform where other people could do the same thing I did, same, low barrier to entry type
Hmm.
opportunity. We take away all the mumbo jumbo of having to start a nonprofit, the management, the insurance and stuff. We take care of all of that. Now we just provide an easy way for people to do what we do in their own community. That right there is now spawned over 470 chapters that we've raised
Oh,
just in the
wow.
last 5 or 6 years. And and that just in a tribute to two things: the meaning behind the mission, which is providing kids for beds. Our
Mm,
mission statement is no kid sleeps on the floor in our town, right?
mm.
We just want our town to
I
be
love it.
everybody's
I
town.
love it. I love it. You motivated me some because uh, my program, my podcast is about encouraging, inspiring, and transforming. And I have just lately, so well, I started, I did one last year, and I'm doing another one this year, going into communities, and I am honoring and recognizing individuals in that community. I always try to get maybe from 5 to 10 who people in the community would recognize, would recommend as being encouraging, inspiring, and transforming. And I generally do it at a banquet, and I'll give those individuals a plaque or something like so. And I'm
Nice.
finding that it's so motivating. People are getting on top of it, saying, oh,
Yeah.
wow, So
Yeah.
I'm listening to what you're doing. I said, maybe I might be onto something here. I don't know. It's very, very, very interesting. You talked about child bedlessness.
Yeah.
So I know people probably want to know what is your definition of that? What do you well, maybe I should just ask it. What is child bedlessness? I assume now, and you just let me know whether I'm right or wrong, is we mean it's children who don't have beds
Yeah.
to sleep on?
Yeah, the best way to explain it is just the story. And
Okay.
you're right. Bedlessness, surprisingly, isn't even a real word, which is the
Okay.
irony of it, because it
Mhm.
it doesn't even know it's real. That's how
Okay.
unhidden,
Hmm.
hidden it is. So, yeah, I have no idea, or had no idea back in 2012 that this was a thing. And
Hmm.
the funny thing is, no one does. No
Okay.
one knows that child bedlessness is an actual problem. You think every child has a bed. And I remember I was sitting in my church. At the time I was what was called a young men's president, which is basically kind of like a youth pastor in the South. And I was responsible for the spiritual growth but the activities of this young men's group, ages about 12 to 17. Well, the activities we always did was Boy Scouts. So I was kind of like the leader of the Boy Scouts. Well, I was sitting in one of these leadership meetings with the other church auxiliary leaders, and a lady got up and started talking about a visit she made to a home of a family that the church was helping.
Hmm.
They needed rides to school and to work, and they needed help with rent, and the kids didn't have any beds, and they, of course,
Hmm.
needed some food. And I said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, stop!" I like stopped the lady. I'm like, "Did
Hmm.
you just say the kids don't have any beds? Like they've got mattresses, right?" And she says, "No, no, they got a blanket and a pill, and they're sleeping on the hardwood floor."
Hmm.
And I just didn't think about that. I didn't know that was a real thing, right? It shocked me, right?
Hmm.
And I started thinking about my own kids because I had 3 kids at the time. What would that be like for my kids as well as me as a parent, trying to provide for
Hmm.
my family and I couldn't provide a bed. That would be rough.
Hmm.
And then I thought about my Boy Scouts thinking, here's a great opportunity because it's hard to find an opportunity of service for these boys or
Hmm.
even an activity that doesn't involve a screen or a computer or an Xbox nowadays, right? So I thought, here's a great opportunity to get an Xbox controller out of these boys' hands. Let's put a drill in it. Let's teach them something. I was a
Hmm.
coach. I coached football, so I liked working with the youth, and so that's what we did. They came over to my house that week, and for a couple of nights, and I'd never built furniture before in my life, but I wasn't a stranger to tools, and being a farm kid, you kind of
Hmm.
figure things out. And we put this bunk bed together, and the boys went and delivered it. It was an amazing experience for them. I didn't get to go because I had to clean my garage,
Hmm.
but they came back the next day at church, and they just told me, how amazing it was to see. Number one, how sad it was to see what these kids were sleeping in and sleeping on, but then how excited the Boy Scouts were to be able to bring these kids a bed, right? And then the
Hmm.
boys got to feel the joy of service. And so in my experience, the very next week, I was a little jealous that I didn't get to go on the delivery, but I was happy, that the boys did.
Hmm.
Well, I wanted the same experience for my kids, right? And
Okay.
even though I had no idea of any other child on the planet. I thought we had solved child bedlessness. I wanted the experience for my kids that the Boy Scouts got, the joy of service, the
Mm-hmm.
joy of giving back,
Mm-hmm.
and certainly to appreciate the things they had. So I had some leftover wood. We went out in the garage and we built another bunk bed. Now, I didn't know what to do with it. I built this bed and it's sitting in my garage, and I'm thinking, well, how do I find another child? Well, my wife said, why don't you put it on uh, Facebook buy sell trade, one of those
Mm-hmm.
things.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that, and two things happened, Dr. Smith. The first thing was how many people commented on this post. It was people I'd never met before. Like, of
Mm-hmm.
course, I didn't know how buy sell trade worked, but yes, people I never met before, didn't know them from Adam, and some of them were friends I hadn't talked to in 20 years, right? And the second thing that was surprising was they all knew kids that didn't
Mm-hmm.
have beds, which was total shock to me, right? In fact, one of my friends called me up. She lived about 30 minutes away in another town and said, "Hey, Luke, have you delivered that bed your kids and you made?" And I said, "No." She says, "Let me tell you about Haley." Now, this was my first experience with seeing and experiencing and being involved with delivering a bed to a child. Haley was a 6-year-old girl that had never slept on a bed before. She
Mm-hmm.
only slept in the backseat of her mom's car. They were homeless. And my friend, through some of her agencies that she worked with, got them a home. And so I thought, this is perfect. This is what I want. We loaded up the bed, hauled it out to Haley's new house, and new. I mean, it was, you could imagine, new to her, right? So we walked into this house. Now, I've been into poverty situations before. I've seen poverty. I've helped with transitioning homelessness and foster care. I've been in these situations before, but I never been in it looking at it through the eyes of a 6-year old and what that would be like. And when you do that and realize there's nothing in this house, there was no couch or
Mm-hmm.
TV to watch cartoons in the morning, or table or chair to eat cereal on in the morning, like we all did when we were growing up.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing in the house was a hot plate that had a can of soup on it, and that was that night's dinner. And but this little girl was so happy. I mean, she had a house, and she was excited to show me and my friend her bedroom, which she didn't know why we were there. She was just excited. I mean, this cute little girl. And we walked back into her room, and I mean, you can imagine what this looked like. Holes in the carpet and tears in the wallpaper, and no closet door. Toys strung out everywhere. But the most shocking thing of that whole scene was in the corner was a pile of clothes. And that's where Haley slept. It was like a little nest that she
Mm-hmm.
made. She'd come home from school, put her PJs on, sleep on her school clothes, shirt for a pillow and pants for a blanket, and then the next day put that same shirt and pants on and go to school.
Wow.
That's what child bedlessness looks like. And
Ah,
right now, there are over 12 million kids in our country, one of the richest countries in the world, that are experiencing child bedlessness.
I understand. I hear you very well. It seems like you have really found your passion,
Mm.
and I can feel it in your conversation as we move through this interview. Uh, and I know even with myself, the example that I just shared with you about what I do, what I start doing. But there are probably many other folk who are listening or will listen to this podcast who, uh, want to find their passion and their purpose in life. They want to do something, but they probably just don't know how to go about it. So,
Yep.
so to be in line with what I'm all about, what would you say to those individuals that will
Yeah.
be encouraging to them, that will be probably inspiring to them, or maybe give them some motivation
Yeah.
to move forward and find their passion and purpose?
Yeah. You're striking my chord here. This is what I do a lot of my keynote speaking on. Because listen, this is my experience and the experience of hundreds of thousands of other people that have been a part of Sleep in Emily Peace that I've got to personally witness.
Okay.
Dr. Smith, we all want to change, right? We all
Hmm.
want to be better and do better and just be this better person and have a happier life. And I mean, we spend a lot of time reading self-help books, and we go to therapy, and we go to classes, and we go to seminars, and we do all these things because we want change. And, you know,
Hmm.
and that's great. We all need to have a desire to change. That's the first step, you know.
Hmm.
It's the second step that's always the tricky one, and it's the most important one, and that's the desire to act on those changes, right? Act
Hmm.
on what you need to do. Now, you're right. Most people don't know what that is. Like,
Hmm.
I don't know what my passion is. I want to change. I just don't know what to do.
Hmm.
Well, here's the key, right? If you want true joy in life, you got to stop looking at yourself and see how you can help someone else out. It's called service, right?
Hmm.
Because what happens when you serve, right? You know, I tell people we all human beings have this horrible superpower. I hate it, where when we have a problem or we're faced with a challenge that we don't want to be faced with, we, you know, it's a hard challenge. We throw it in the closet, we forget about it, and all it does is grow. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? You
Hmm.
know, and the same old adage, you know, you got to face your challenges. Well, sometimes they're damn hard to face, right? And
Hmm.
it's difficult. Well, when you go and serve people, and when you stop thinking about your problems and help other people out, it puts you in a mind frame, it puts you in a state of mind where now you have a different perspective on life, right?
Hmm.
And now you can open that closet door, you can look at that monster and realize, huh, it's not as big as I thought. It's not as heavy as it feels. Service puts us in a way to solve our problems and work through them because they don't go away. We still have to face them.
Hmm.
And what service does, it comes from acting on that service. So I teach people, listen, you have to follow your tiny moments, right? We all excuse them away. Of course, we all do, you
Hmm.
know, too busy. I don't know how to do that. Someone else
Hmm.
is doing it. You know, I don't have time. Of course, there's and even legitimate excuses. However, we are faced with tiny moments that we can do all the time. It happens every day, right?
Hmm.
And it's the exercise, it's the practice of working on these tiny moments. You know, if you want to get good at free throws, what do you got to do? You got to go shoot some free throws, right?
Hmm.
Why do we think as humans that we want to change? We want to make difference, and we know acting on these tiny moments, if they help us find passion, and passion leads to purpose,
Hmm.
then why don't we continue to act, continue to practice on acting on tiny moments? And you know what? A tiny moment doesn't always have to change the world, right? In fact, 99.9% of all the tiny moments and acts of service that we do, they don't change the world. But I promise you one thing. I will give you one promise. It'll change someone's world.
Hmm.
And that someone, most of the time, it's just you.
Hmm.
And that's what we're looking for. You know, that's where real change begins to happen.
I
When
hear
you
you.
when you act on these tiny moments, when you do these, I mean, it could be smiling at the grocery clerk, right? Or
Hmm.
saying hello to the person in behind you in line, right? Or go mow your neighbor's lawn. You know, these little tiny moments put you in a pathway where you can find your passion. And once you find your passion and you start following it and you start replicating it and then you start sharing it, that passion turns into purpose. And you know what? There's nothing worse in life than a life without purpose.
I
And
love it.
so that's the steps.
I love it. Listeners, don't go any place. Hang with me. Luke has given us some really great information, and this interview is just awesome.
Hmm.
So I want to ask Luke, if listeners want to learn more about what you do, and whether you have a book or website or anything of that nature that you can share with them so that they can get a little bit more information on you. Would you do that
Yeah.
at this time?
Absolutely. Yeah. First of all, if you want to get hold of me, you know, Luke at lukemickelson.com. That's one email address, or luke.mickelson at shpbeds.org. That's me as well. On my socials, literally just go into any social, type in Luke Mickelson or SHP Luke, you'll find me. And please
Okay.
connect with me. I'd love to connect with you. If you're interested in learning more about Sleep in Heavenly Peace, the charity where we build beds for kids,
Hmm.
we're the largest in the world, right? So we know what we're doing. We build hundreds of thousands of beds. You can go to our website, shpbeds.org. And the cool thing about our website, Dr. Smith, is it's not some national website. We know that this problem, this child bedlessness problem, needs to be solved by you in
Hmm.
your community. I can't
Hmm.
solve it for you, right? These kids need your help. So when you bring that shpbeds.org up, it's going to bring up the closest chapter to you. It might be right in your own hometown. You don't even know it. You're
Mm,
going to see how many kids are on their waiting list. You're going to see
okay.
how many events are going on, how many beds they've built. You can donate.
Mm,
100% of your donation stays in that chapter. We take some of that to help pay for the chapter's expenses,
hmm. Right.
but all the beds and the money stays in that chapter.
Mm,
And if there's not a chapter close by, heck, you can start a chapter. We make this process very simple for people that just have a big heart that want to help kids. We make that process. We put on 50, 60 chapters a year. That's how fast we grow because we want people and we need people in communities to step up and solve this problem for their kids in their community.
Luke, you've been awesome. I did
Mm,
want to ask this last question of you. You obviously you've scaled this business. I mean, it's been awesome. You're
mm.
nationwide, and you're just doing it. So my question to you is then, what do the leaders today deal with when their businesses scale beyond them?
Yeah.
And I think being in the position you are, that should be a pretty easy question for you to help me with.
It's not only an easy question, trust me when I say I totally understand it. I actually have a podcast myself called the Leadership Evolution
Mm,
Podcast, where I
mm,
talk about the challenges of that leaders go through, not just during their business, but when their business does grow. That's
hmm.
signs of success. And when your business grows beyond you, which is awesome, it's totally cool. But there are things that happen to founders, to CEOs, that when they experience these things, it can be very difficult, right? And to be able to understand what those feelings and where they come from is very critical. It's sad to see there's a lot of founders and CEOs that can't handle and don't handle what I call founder syndrome. When they go through it, they don't handle it very well, and all of a sudden they're kicked out of their own organization. Happens in nonprofits all the time,
Hmm.
and so being able to understand and better yet plan for that time, that day that's coming where you are no longer needed, right? And need doesn't mean valued. Of
Hmm.
course, you're always valued, and that's a hard thing to remember. That's a hard thing not to feel when you're less needed. You feel less valued. And when you've built this organization and it's your identity and you've grown with it and you've fused with it, and all of a sudden you feel like you're not really a part of it anymore, right? These are
Hmm.
the challenges. I teach a 6 week module course called Founder Syndrome Survival Course because it is survival. And I try to help nonprofits coach them, nonprofit leaders and founders, how you can deal with this. You're not alone and you're not going crazy, right?
Hmm.
There's reasons why it's difficult to manage and deal with and plan for the future as
Hmm.
your organization grows beyond you, and that's can be difficult to deal with. So you can find some of my information on lukemickelson.com.
hmm.
That's my personal website, and I have a little bit of information on that, and you can hook up with me there.
Thank you so much, Luke. You've given us some very valuable information. The interview with you has been just awesome, and we want to thank you so very much for sharing. And I want the listeners to know that that's Luke Mickelson, Mickelson. Check him out, and there you have it. Luke Mickelson sharing with us today. And until next time, peace and blessings be with each of you.